All right, I will say good morning. Let us begin. Such a schus to continue in Tzidkas Hatzaddik. Again, it's been a very long time. So we are picking up this morning in Os Lamed Gimel. I sent it out on the chat yesterday, so you should have the PDF. Os Lamed Gimel. So we'll say, so let's actually begin, if it's all right, with the introduction that he has in the Be'uri HaChasidus. Remember again, for those who are joining this share, the Tzidkas Hatzaddik, so the top, right, the large print, is Tzidkas Hatzaddik, Reb Tzaddik himself. The section below that, titled Be'uri HaChasidus, is like a perush. It's commentary on the Seif, which helps provide a lot of background to Reb Tzaddik's idea. So if you take a look in the Be'uri HaChasidus, the right-hand column, the bottom of that column, that says Lepamim Zrizin Maktimin Af Mehalayla. So look what he writes. Lamed Gimel. Le'el Chova Habraisa Bebrachas. Hamidayekes mihapasuk bebinyan beis hamikdash sheni v'anachnu osim melacha me'alos hashachar atzeis hakochavim shatzeis hakochavim nechshab. So remember again, Reb Tzaddik really throughout since the beginning of this sefer has been focusing on different pieces, different ideas extracted from the beginning of Maseches Brachos. So remember from our Daf Yomi days, the beginning of Maseches Brachos is fully focused on the definition of day versus night. More specifically, again, night, because remember, again, the first Mishnah begins with Kriya Shema Shel Arvis. So here, Reb Tzaddik says that the Gemara quotes the idea that in the second Beis HaMikdash, the Gemara quotes a pasuk that said they were working in the Beis HaMikdash, Me'alos HaShachar Tzeis HaKochavim, Nehemiah. What's incredible, right? Right, what a wonderful lead-in from last night's shir. Right, last night we were speaking about again Nehemiah vis-a-vis Hilchos Muktzah. Now we're starting the Gemara again, quoting Nehemiah vis-a-vis the Beis Hamikdash. So Nehemiah writes that they worked on the Beis Hamikdash me'alos hashachar, from dawn at Tzeis HaKochavim, until nightfall. That was interesting enough the way the Gemara uses that pasuk. Is that Nehemiah is kind of creating an image that we worked the entire day. So you see from the pasuk in Nehemiah, when does the day begin? The day begins as of Alos. And when does the day end? The day ends as of Tzeis HaKochavim. Shat Tzeis HaKochavim nechshad yom. So I'll say the whole reason the Gemara brings up this discussion is to show that until Tzeis HaKochavim, until nightfall, it is considered day. Umosifa habraisa va'omer, and the Brisa continues and says, V'hayulanu halayla mishmar, v'hayom malacha. And then the pasuk continues, it says that the nighttime was for us a watch, and the day was for work. Umiva'eres hakimar shabliya pasuk hasheni hayisi omer shemishkias hachama nechshav kivar shiyarat halayla rak shebebinyan beis hamikdash hayu mashkimin lifnei shehischil hayom uma'achrim la'avod gam balayla. So remember, the Gemara says, without that second qualification pasuk, that we worked during the day, I might have thought that no. Really, day extends from when? From sunrise to sunset. The fact that they worked on the Beis Hamikdash from dawn until Tzeis HaKochavim was just because they were putting in longer hours. Kamash Malan, Nehemiah comes along and says that no, the definition of day is from Alos until Tzeis HaKochavim. Good. That's the Gemara in Maseches Brachos. So also what that Gemara does for us is tells us that halacha l'maaseh it's daytime, at least according to this opinion of the Gemara, until Tzeis HaKochavim. So look what Reb Tzaddik writes. He says, Afal Gav, this is really such a beautiful and incredible piece. Afal Gav, shahadinhu b'chol ha-mitzvahs, zrizim makdimin l'mitzvahs. We're familiar with this concept. Zrizim makdimin l'mitzvahs. Namely, again, that it's not just enough to go ahead and perform the mitzvahs, but mitzvahs must be done with a zrizos, an alacrity. And how does one go ahead and demonstrate a sense of zrizos? Makdimin. To do things as quickly and as early as possible. So even though we know this principle, zrizin makdimin the mitzvahs, those who are zoris take the first opportunity to perform it. So I will say, obviously, the entire essence of what does this mean? Or why isn't it enough just to get the job done? Why must there be an element of zrizos? So remember again, it's the zrizos, it's the alacrity, it's the eagerness and zeal with which you approach something that is truly demonstrative about how you feel about that particular endeavor. So in other words, doing something with zrizos shows that this is something that is important to me. We'll say anyone who's married knows this lesson, right? Also, which is there are certain things that I'm obligated to do, right? Certain things I have, but how you do it makes all of the difference. Right? How you go ahead and relate to that particular thing you have makes all, so the task might get done at the end of the day, right? The garbage might go out, or the errands might get accomplished, but how you do it, and the speed and the zeal with which you do it shows how you feel about it. Same thing in our avodas Hashem. That's his reason. Makdim in the mitzvahs. So look what he writes. This is incredible. He says, "Uberega harishon shelo yachal l'kaimo." And we'll say, obviously, the idea of Zrizus says the first opportunity you have to do a mitzvah, you should do it. B'chol zos, ein aleim lios makdimin tfei mitzafra. But I will say, interestingly enough, even Zrizus apparently has its limitations. Right, has its limitations. He says, "Aval b'chol zos ein aleim lios makdimin tfei mitzafra lahashkim l'shem kach lifnei tchilas haboker." So I'll say, so there are limitations to Zrizus. In other words, I'm not obligated to go ahead and do a mitzvah in the first moment of the matter. For example, I'll say, let's say there's an obligation. I have an obligation to do a chesed. There's a chesed opportunity that comes before me. Zriz makdim mitzvahs. We'll say, so do I have an obligation to not go to sleep at night in order that I can be able to perform an act of chesed? Pashtos, no. Right, I'm allowed to sleep. But what does Zrizus say? Zrizus says that as soon as you're up for the day, grab the opportunity as soon as you can. See, he says, this is just an important yesod. Even Zrizus itself has certain limitations to it. In other words, it means bizoris in the general context of performance. But one is not necessarily obligated to go ahead and, in his example, bizoris before the day starts. So he goes on, he explains it beautifully. He says, Kimosha Amru Chazal, the Parakama de Psachim. So we'll say this is great. So he quotes over the Gemara Maseches Psachim that says as follows: Al Sheilas HaGemara, Lama Tignu Chachamim Lahaktim Velivdok Es HaChametz Belel Yudalid. Velo Dai Bekach Sheyivdok Es HaChametz Yom Midas. So we know Bedikas Chametz takes place, first Mishnah Maseches Psachim, or La'arba'asar Bodkin Es HaChametz. On the night of the 14th, we check for chametz. Why do you have to do the night of the 14th? Why can't you do the morning of the 14th? Say im tomar. So we'll say im tomar should take nuzos mishum shazrizim akdim lemitzvos harirak baboke yeshak dam lezizim. So maybe we'll say, zrizos. There's a mitzvah of tashbisu. There's a mitzvah to destroy all the chametz you have in your home, and therefore, again, although technically speaking, one could have performed that mitzvah on the morning of erev Pesach, because of zrizin makdim lemitzvos, we do the bedika at night, right? The night of Erev Pesach. So we'll say, Hari rak baboker yesh akdama lezrizim. As we just said, even Zrizos has its limitations, right? So remember, again, I will say, if I want to be Zoriz, I want to be alacritus, I want to be eager and zealous to perform the mitzvah of bedikas chametz, at the end of the day, does that obligate me to do it the night before? No. Where does it obligate me to do? Where does it obligate me to go ahead and do it as early in the day as I can? But it's very important. Where do we learn the concept of Zrizin Makdim Lemitzvos? Where do we learn it from? Avram Avinu, Vayashkim Avram Baboker, Vayachavo Shes Chamoro. Right? Avram Avinu got up early in the morning for the Akedah, and ultimately, again, he saddles his own donkey. Avram Avinu is the paradigmatic example of Zrizin Makdim Mitzvahs. But I will say, interestingly enough, what didn't Avram Avinu do? What didn't he do? That's a strange question, open-ended question. What didn't he do? He didn't leave the night before. Right? If you're so Zariz, don't go to sleep. If you're so Zariz, don't go to sleep. You're so Zariz, back everything. See over here, Bosai, that even Zrizos has its parameters. So what Zrizos says on any given day, to perform your opportunities as quickly as, which I will say, just as you should appreciate, is such an incredible yesod. Because what it says is, like Shlomo Melech says in Koheles, Lakol zman va'iz tachas hashamayim. There's a time for everything. And everything must be exercised in moderation. I said, do you know what happens if a person exhibits hyperzrizus? You know what we call that? right? It could be anxiety, right? It could also be OCD. You know, a lot of times, by the way, a lot of times that, you know, in our community, interestingly enough, OCD goes undiagnosed because it often presents sometimes in the form of like super diligence with details of mitzvahs. But there comes a point where, again, there's an unhealthy tip, and that's not zrizos. That's not zrizos. Unfortunately, again, that's something much more significant. So you see over here that even zrizos itself has its parameters. La kolzman veis, every midah, even the best one, has to be applied in a normal, balanced fashion. Because if it's all zaris all the time, and at the end of the day, again, no matter what, that becomes a bit problematic. So we'll say, listen to this. So given that reality, we have an interesting dynamic here by B'dikas Chametz. Because we'll say, so remember again, so why is B'dikas Chametz then done at night? At the end of the day, it can't be because of Zrizos, because Zrizos just says that halacha l'maisa, whatever you have to do it early in the morning, do whatever you can in the day, to which Tzidkas says, Im tomar shetiknuho, because again, that's learned from Avram Avinu, that Avram Avinu only went ultimately to the Akedah first thing in the morning, didn't go at night. So we'll say, I'm going to leave you over here. We'll stop over here because you have to pick up with the daf now. But understand, we'll leave off with this. So we'll say, so now Hatzaddik introduces us to the power of Zrizos, which we already learned from Avram Avinu, gives us the parameters of Zrizos. Parameters of Zrizos ultimately, again, being early in the day, but doesn't require you to do anything before the day. Doesn't require you to give up your sleep. Doesn't require you to perform this in the middle of the night. So interestingly enough, yet B'dikas Chametz is done at night. I will say, so the truth is, we know, the Gemara tells us, why is B'dikas Chametz done at night? Why? Because our ner yafa balayla. Because B'dikas Chametz is B'dikas chornus dakim. You're checking the cracks and the crevices in the home. You need a candle. Candlelight works much better at night, but Hatzaddik is going to understand on a deeper level that the fact that the B'dika is done at night teaches us a different form of Zrizos, and Mir Hashem to be continued tomorrow. Shkach Habosai.